Video number 36. So, can you see it? Truly I say to you, unless a person is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. God's kingdom. Jehovah's kingdom. So, what were you expecting to see Jehovah do? When he becomes king and the end of Satan and his world is here. Well, you should expect to see a mustard seed that slowly grows. But what would Jehovah do, and how would he do it? So, perhaps to help you see that it's really happening, I'd like to read something from Ezekiel chapter 20. And it might help you to see God's kingdom. Jesus Christ said he'd send us a helper. So here we go, Ezekiel chapter 20, and I'll start in verse 33. Is this what you're expecting to see? And can you see it? As I am alive is the utterance of the sovereign Lord Jehovah. It will be with a strong hand and with a stretched out arm and with outpoured rage that I will rule as king over you people. And I will bring you forth from the peoples, and I will collect you together out of the lands to which you have been scattered with a strong hand and with outpoured rage. So, has that happened? Have you been taken away from that place of darkness? And was it an easy, convenient thing for you to have experienced that? Or have you felt Jehovah's outpoured rage and his strong arm? I'm convinced that there are hundreds of thousands of disfellowshipped Jehovah's Witnesses all around the world who, with labor pains, are suffering through grief. Grief that's due to Jehovah now being king of the world, while Satan will no longer be. Satan is now conquered. One person has conquered Satan, and there'll be more. So I'll keep going. And I will bring you forth from the peoples, and I will collect you together out of the lands to which you have been scattered, with a strong hand and with a stretched out arm, and with outpoured rage. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples. In the wilderness. where the woman is fed, away from the face of Satan. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples, and put myself on judgment with you there, face to face. So, has the wheat now been separated from the weeds? And this wheat that's in the wilderness, is it now being judged? And how is it being judged? By Jehovah, with outpoured rage and a strong arm. The judgment is now happening. And through this judgment, the wheat is being separated from the chaff. A further separation is happening. And so that's very different to the way popular Christianity think about these things, because they imagine that the people taken away are immediately raptured up to heaven somehow, and confuse that with lots of other scriptures and have some strange doctrine about something else happening. But here, this is what we should expect if we're going to see Jehovah as king of his kingdom, king of the world. So he goes on to liken it to what he did in ancient times. He says here in verse 36, just as I put myself on judgment with your forefathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I shall put myself on judgment with you, is the utterance of the sovereign Lord Jehovah. So we are now undergoing a judgment. And if you've watched and understood all of the previous videos, I've explained why and how that is in fact happening. He goes on to say, and I will make you pass under the rod and bring you into the bond of the covenant. A covenant of peace. Peace that will be brought about through righteousness, the truth, and justice, a judgment. Listen carefully what it goes on to say in regards to these people who are brought into a wilderness. And I will clean out from you the revolters and the transgressors against me, for out of the land of their alien residence I shall bring them, but onto the soil of Israel they will not come. And you people will have to know that I am Jehovah. So, can you see that happening? The wheat now being further separated from the chaff. That the winnowing shovel is indeed in Jesus Christ's hand, and he is cleaning up his threshing floor. And the wheat is being separated from the chaff with fire and with spirit. I'll keep reading. And you, O house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah has said. Go serve each one of you his own dungy idols, and afterward if you are not listening to me, then my holy name you will no more profane by your gifts and by your dungy idols. For in my holy mountain, in the mountain of the height of Israel, is the utterance of the sovereign Lord Jehovah. There is where they, the whole house of Israel, the booth of David that was being rebuilt by people out of all the nations, a people called by God's name, the house of Israel. There is where they, the whole house of Israel in its entirety, will serve me in the land. So, how do you serve Jehovah? You, in turn, are to bear witness. There I shall take pleasure in them, and there I shall require your contributions and the first fruits of your presentations in all your holy things. Because of the restful odor, I shall take pleasure in you when I bring you forth from the peoples, and I actually collect you together from the lands to which you have been scattered, and I will be sanctified in you before the eyes of the nation. And you people will have to know that I am Jehovah when I bring you onto the soil of Israel, into the land that I lifted up my hand in an oath to give to your forefathers. God's kingdom, the promised land, the paradise earth that we all learned about when we went to 5 meetings a week for years and years. And you people will have to know that I am Jehovah when I bring you in onto the soil of Israel. So perhaps you haven't exactly seen that yet, but have you seen all the other things happening? Have you felt Jehovah's outpoured rage? And do you understand why he's angry? Did you watch that video? The governing body really are the rulers of God's people, the people in Jesus Christ's kingdom. And you understand why he made a decision to cause an extermination throughout all the land. And yet here is a tiny group of people, a remnant, who've been separated from the weeds, taken away, and they're now being threshed on a threshing floor. Jesus Christ is winnowing them, refining them like gold, and like the live laundryman, whitening their clothes. But on the other hand, the transgressors and revolters are now being separated. The chaff is blowing away. And why? Because they did not listen. So if you can see God's kingdom, if you are being born again, then you should see that Jehovah will be sanctified. Remember what it said here? I shall take pleasure in you when I bring you forth from the peoples, and I actually collect you together from the lands to which you have been scattered, and I will be sanctified in you before the eyes of the nations. So remember what it said in Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 5. This is the chapter about the covenant with death. It says, in that day, Jehovah of armies will become as a crown of decoration and as a garland of beauty to the ones remaining over of his people, and a spirit of justice to the one sitting in the judgment. Jehovah will be sanctified, and he'll force it to happen with outpoured rage and an outstretched arm. Can you see it happening? And if people don't listen, listen to what? Well, let's keep reading again in Isaiah chapter 28. Verse 11 now. For by those stammering with their lips and by a different tongue, he will speak to this people. Those to whom he has said, this is the resting place. Give rest to the weary one, and this is the place of ease, but who were not willing to hear. They did not want to listen. And to them, the word of Jehovah will certainly become command upon command, command upon command, measuring line upon measuring line, here a little, there a little, in order that they may go and certainly stumble backwards and actually be broken and ensnared and caught. So this winnowing is simply through God's Spirit. Jehovah's word that people don't want to listen to. And it further separates people who will eventually become a very special property to Jehovah in a judgment that happens through Jehovah God himself. So I'd like to remind you about something written in the book of Zechariah about the end time. So here it is in Zechariah chapter 4. I'll start in verse 6. Accordingly, he answered and said to me, this is the word of Jehovah to Zerubbabel, saying, not by a military force, nor by power, but by my Spirit, Jehovah of armies has said. What Spirit? Let's go to John chapter 15. I'll start in verse 26. when the Helper arrives, that I will send you from the Father, Jehovah, the Spirit of the truth. Not by a military force, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says Jehovah of armies. When the Helper arrives, that I will send you from the Father, the Spirit of the truth, which proceeds from the Father, that one will bear witness about me. And you in turn are to bear witness. By Jehovah's Spirit, the Spirit of the truth, sent by the Father, Jehovah. So, when God's kingdom starts, we should eventually see a threshed remnant of people that Jehovah does indeed take pleasure in. Can you see it? God's kingdom. I'll remind you what it said in Malachi chapter 3, verse 16. At that time, those in fear of Jehovah spoke with one another, each one with his companion, and Jehovah kept paying attention and listening. And a book of remembrance began to be written up before him for those in fear of Jehovah and for those thinking upon his name. So, have you or are you experiencing Jehovah's outpoured rage and his outstretched arm? And does that make you tremble in fear of Jehovah, the King of God's kingdom? Verse 17. And they will certainly become mine. Jehovah of armies has said, at the day when I am producing a special property, and I will show compassion upon them, just as a man shows compassion upon his son who is serving him. And you people will again certainly see the distinction between a righteous one and a wicked one, between one serving God and one who has not served him. Can you see the difference? Let me read John chapter 15 and verse 26. Again, can you see the distinction between a person serving Jehovah and one who has not served him? When the Helper arrives, that I will send you from the Father, Jehovah, the Spirit of the truth, that one will bear witness about me, and you in turn, are to bear witness. Can you see the difference between one who is serving Jehovah and the one who is not? The distinction between someone righteous and someone wicked? Are you a person that Jehovah now takes pleasure in? Or are you continuing to revolt against Jehovah and his kingdom? Will you go backwards, be ensnared, caught, and broken? So think carefully about that. Now I'll read Revelation chapter 12. The chapter about the great sign in heaven. And she gave birth to a son, a male, who is to shepherd all the nations with an iron rod. So now, Revelation chapter 2, verse 26. And to him that conquers and observes my deeds down to the end, I will give authority over the nations, and he shall shepherd the people with an iron rod, so that they will be broken to pieces, like clay vessels, the same as I have received from my Father. They'll go backwards. They'll be ensnared, caught, and broken. Can you see God's kingdom?